He was born in Alameda, California, just before the dawning of the 20th century. His mother raised him while his father left them to chase dreams of gold in Alaska. Within 3 years, they would be rejoined in the frontier town of Nome, where he was forced to write that he was the shortest student in the town's one-room school. But if he never grew very tall, he would rise over the years to the stature of national hero. He would achieve world recognition as the holder of speed records and earn the Medal of Honor. His contributions to aviation revolutionized the industry. His name was Jimmy Doolittle, and he is a legend of air power. Missed the fighting war in Europe. Now he and the fledgling Air Corps faced a greater challenge: how to convince senior officers and the public that the airplane was not only a weapon needing further development, but deserving of its own branch of the service. While General Billy Mitchell was flying demonstration flights, bombing captured German battleships to exploit the aircraft's destructive capability, Lieutenant Jimmy Doolittle was on the West Coast, mastering his flying lessons and developing some techniques of his own. He convinced his immediate superiors that the proof the public needed lay in demonstrating that the airplane was reliable and safe. If he could use the airplane to set records, it would bring glory and good public attention to the Army. He was given the green light. After several failed attempts, on September 4th, 1922, he made the first coast-to-coast flight in less than 24 hours. With the feat came headlines and the greater willingness to let him do more, which fit Jimmy's plans perfectly.
His public image was one of a daredevil, but he was a master of the calculated risk, in that he never took a risk without calculating the chances of surviving that risk.
In October 1925, Doolittle won the Schneider Cup race in a Curtiss seaplane with an average speed of 232.5 miles per hour. In the following 4 years, he won the McKay and Bendix trophies, and in 1929 completed his test of the first instrument-only flight.
The greatest contribution that I made to aviation was when the Guggenheim Fund established a blind flying laboratory, of which I was the head. And we developed the artificial horizon, the directional gyroscope, and various things that made it possible to fly regardless of weather, and ended up with making a trip around the field under the hood, never having seen out of the airplane.
In September 1932, he set another world speed record, this time in the Granville Brothers GB, at an average speed of 296 miles per hour. It was his last race. Doolittle's gift was anticipation, and just as he had seen the need in the industry for greater durability and safety, he now realized that the age of experimentation, seat-of-the-pants flying, was over. From here on, he would need more expertise. He was admitted to the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, where he earned both his master's and doctorate in aeronautical engineering. It was also clear to him that greater speed demanded more than just a bigger engine. He left the service to join the Shell Oil Corporation in New York. He served as spokesman for the company, but also began his own campaign for Shell to begin refining higher-octane fuel. He visited Europe and took careful note of airplane development there, particularly in Germany, and was alarmed at what he saw. In his opinion, Germany was clearly rebuilding an offensive air capability. A new war was coming. He brought those concerns back to his old friends in the Army, and then made a new pitch. Jimmy Doolittle knew the Air Corps wasn't ready to fight a war. They would need new aircraft. They would need new ideas. they would need experienced leaders. He asked for and got recalled to active service, now as a lieutenant colonel. He set about looking at the plans and tactics. Then, on December 7th, 1941, Japanese naval aircraft attacked the American bases at Pearl Harbor, Hawaii. Now America joined the World War.
I ask that the Congress declare that since the unprovoked and dastardly attack by Japan on Sunday, December 7th, 1941, a state of war has existed between the United States and the Japanese Empire.
Pearl Harbor was just the beginning. The Japanese attacked at Guam, Manila, Wake Island, and the Solomons. The Japanese Navy effectively created a wide defensive ring around the home islands. Emperor Hirohito announced Japan would never be attacked successfully by her enemies. Few in the U.S. would have argued with him. With the loss of our battleships and thousands of troops at Bataan and outposts at Wake Island, attacking Japan looked to be impossible for the foreseeable future. Doolittle was selected to devise a plan to carry the war to Japan. His solution was to select 18 Army Air Corps bomber crews and train them in B-25 bombers to do the impossible. Operating in complete secrecy, they trained at Eglin, Florida, learning how to force a fully loaded B-25 airborne in less than 400 feet. In March, the crews flew their bombers cross-country to San Francisco, where they were loaded aboard the aircraft carrier USS Hornet and lashed to its wooden deck. Even then, the crews didn't know where they were going or their specific mission. If they were lucky, and the Japanese didn't discover them first, they would strike the first offensive blow against the Empire of Japan. At a point roughly 400 miles from Japan, they would launch their planes off the carrier. For Jimmy Doolittle, there could be just one destination: Tokyo. April 18, 1942. Doolittle's Raiders have enough fuel aboard for an 850-mile round trip. The plan calls for the planes and crews to make their bomb runs, scatter, and then return to a rendezvous point where they can ditch their planes close to the task force and be recovered. But a lookout plane spots a Japanese fishing boat. Has it seen the Hornet and transmitted their position? The order is given to destroy the boat. Doolittle knows their best advantage is surprise, and it's possible they struck quickly enough. But he cannot risk the mission on that guess. Despite being over 800 miles from the target, the extreme range of these planes, he gives the order. There will be no pickup by the Navy now. Now they must make their runs and then push on for China, hoping to land their planes safely, hope to find sympathetic Chinese forces rather than Japanese troops along the coastline, hope to survive until they can regroup and get back. One by one, the B-25 Mitchells run up their engines, wobble forward, and lurch into the air. Doolittle knows the odds, and like so many other times in his career, he knows there are no alternatives. They have a mission, they have their orders, they go. The Japanese are so confident in their security, there is no fighter cover.
Thus, the bombers were virtually unopposed as they flew on the deck. They swept in over the coast on their way to Tokyo. Elements separated and some climbed to 1,500 feet for the bombing. At 12:15, the attack was opened by Doolittle, who dove in before he unloaded his incendiaries upon the Japanese capital. Checked off their targets. gunpowder factory.
Surprise is complete. The shock is devastating to the Japanese. Tokyo has been bombed. The lift to American morale is without measure. Doolittle has done it again.
One purpose was to give the folks at home the first good news that we had had in World War II.
Doolittle himself is not pleased. Downed in China, his crews are missing. 2 broke orders and landed in the Soviet Union in Vladivostok. They're taken prisoner and remain in Soviet hands for over a year. Many crash land and are injured. One has a leg amputated. All of the aircraft are lost. On this, his first mission as a combat commander, Doolittle is sure the mission has been a disaster.
He felt he was a failure. It caused them to bring back their fighter units to defend the Japanese islands and change their strategy in the Pacific. And changing their strategy led them to believe that they should capture Midway Island, and in that great battle they lost. So that could be said that the Tokyo raid by Jimmy Doolittle and his raiders was the beginning of the end.
President Roosevelt awards him the Medal of Honor and promotes him to Brigadier General. Doolittle is astonished. Accepting the medal in the name of his crews, he says to the president, "I will spend the rest of my life trying to earn this medal." Jimmy found himself with a new assignment, 12th Air Force Commander and later the 15th Air Force Commander. His job? Take on the Luftwaffe in the skies over North Africa.
A British lad came by with the new Spitfire that was just out, a beautiful airplane. And I was looking it over, and he said, "Would you like to fly it?" I said, "Well, yes, I would indeed." And so I got into this Spitfire and flew around for a while. Suddenly noticed 2 battleships that were lobbing shells at each other. So I went over to watch that. And while just as soon as I got there, why, they both started shooting at me. So I got out of there. It was a very interesting experience. When I got back, the officer of the day said, "General Eisenhower wants to see you right away." And so I rushed in there, and he was boiling. He said, "I'm trying to get you. Where have you been?" I said, "Well, I was out trying out one of the new Spitfires." And he said, "Listen, I've got news for you. You can either try out new Spitfires and be a second lieutenant, or you can be a brigadier general and be my airman." Well, that was the first I knew that I was up for promotion. So I said, "Well, it's a very easy decision, sir. I'll do the best I can." And spent the next year, and I must say that a year from then, when he went up to take over the big command, he took me with him. I consider it the best job of salesmanship I've ever done.
Jimmy Doolittle succeeded in defeating the Germans and controlling the sky.
We had 12th Air Force bomber boys who had started in the muddy fields of Algeria. They were teamed up with 9th Air Force men who had eaten sand all the way from Egypt, 1,500 miles. Before 9 o'clock, we had planned to fly more than 1,000 sorties. Anything that could take off went up to the corridor. Our fighter bomber boys, including the 57th Group of Cape Bone fame, were about to sweep a road to Tunis. We were using the experience gained in Egypt, smashing Rommel at El Alamein. Then we were only a few. Now we were hundreds, all grouped in a powerful package. The Germans, realizing their desperate situation, retreated to make a last-ditch stand.
From North Africa, Doolittle was promoted to Lieutenant General and moved on to England as commander of the 8th Air Force. From there, he directed U.S. strategic bombing of Germany. The Luftwaffe Fighter Command played havoc with the slower bombers. American escort fighters, already stretched to the limits of their range, could help to fend off attacks, but defense proved inadequate. Doolittle proposed a radical solution: take the battle to the Luftwaffe. weeks, the indomitable Luftwaffe no longer controlled the skies over Germany. At war's end, Doolittle has brought about massive changes to the weapons and tactics of aviation. He has served with distinction in history's greatest war and won nearly every decoration and award in the civilian and military world. Shell offers him his old job back as Vice President of Research. He agrees, but also has other things on his mind.
Jimmy Doolittle's post-World War II career is not as well known as his career before the war or during the war, but in point of fact, Doolittle's post-World War II career is really quite remarkable in its own right. He was one of the major figures behind the creation, working behind the scenes for the creation of the United States Air Force. And he was one of the major figures behind the creation of the Air Force Association.
The Air Force Association was formed to press for a separate military branch for the air power he has done so much to build. He is elected as its first president, and Doolittle, with his chief officers, meets with President Truman to press their recommendations. On September 18, 1947, President Truman signs the National Security Act, creating the Department of the Air Force.
We had a fervent belief that, just as General Arnold had said, it is important for the United States to maintain its air power, because the world is never going to be completely stable. And he said, I want to inform the American public on how important it is to occupy the high ground, to get there first with the most, and to know where the enemy is before he knows where you are.
Doolittle is also recognized for his vision and becomes an advisor to President Dwight Eisenhower. He serves first as a member of Eisenhower's Technical Advisory Committee, recommending development of such extraordinary aircraft as the SR-71 Blackbird. Finally, he is named chairman of the National Advisory Committee on Aeronautics, where he serves until it becomes NASA in 1958.
I think that he would say, in a completely self-effacing way, that he had just done what he considered to be his duty.
General Doolittle was a master of brevity. As an example, in the early days as his president, and we didn't have computers, we were lucky to have 3x5 cards. And obviously members weren't getting their magazine or this or that, and then write in complaining. Doolittle would often answer me, he'd just say, "Dear so-and-so, I agree." Sincerely, Doolittle. He was great at that.
Now in his 60s, Jimmy Doolittle turns over the reins of power to younger men. But he was still active, participating in AFA meetings, making speeches, and visiting air shows. At an AFA dinner held at the Smithsonian Air and Space Museum, President Ronald Reagan paid this tribute to Jimmy Doolittle.
Will you join me in a toast to a magnificent American, a man whose name will be remembered as long as the virtues of valor and patriotism last? Jimmy Doolittle.
And in June 1985, President Reagan awarded Doolittle his 4th star. Jimmy Doolittle died on September 27, 1993, and was buried at Arlington National Cemetery.
Our leader has fallen. He led us in war and in peace, and he led us by example. He was an uncommon man whose foresight, integrity, and courage and intelligence are unmatched in the annals of aviation.
2 years later, the Air Force Association dedicated this statue of him in the lobby of the association's headquarters.
The statue of General James H. Doolittle commemorates a lifetime of achievements. It has been written that General Doolittle led one of the most useful lives in American history. I'm sure all of here would certainly agree. His achievements range from the practical to the theoretical. The general once explained his philosophy of life by saying, "I believe we were put here on earth for a purpose, to make it, within our capabilities, a better place in which to live." The world is a better place thanks to this unique individual. I am sure I speak for all of us here today, and when I say how proud the Air Force Association is to have a constant reminder in the likeness of this man of wisdom, of humor, and of warm humanity. This legend in his time and ours.
Doolittle literally had a hand in aeronautics all the way from the very earliest days of the open cockpit biplane, indeed the open framework biplane, all the way up to the first efforts to put man into space. You look at him, this short little guy, and he was truly a giant.
And a legend of air power.